Let's watch this video. In the description it says, for the longest time Bryan Johnson was saying that his diet was vegan by choice, so I never felt the need to criticize him. Now he is making the ridiculous claim that he is the healthiest person on the planet and says things like he's created the perfect diet. Let's see what Bryan has to say for himself.
My name is Bryan Johnson. I've been spending millions of dollars creating an anti-aging protocol. So we looked through all the scientific evidence and we put all the science into me.
Bryan Johnson, the tech entrepreneur who spends $2 million a year to not die, just recently released on all his social that he is the healthiest person in the world. And Bryan finally explained why his perfect blueprint diet is vegan. He's emphasized many times just how much care he puts into his diet, saying every calorie has to fight for its life.
Every calorie has had to fight.
I love the fact that he's friends with Aoki. Aoki is a DJ, in case you don't know. The guy literally sleeps like an average of like 6 hours per day, which for Bryan is preposterous. And looks incredibly young. He basically is awake 200 nights of the year, sleeping during the day in airplanes and whatnot, in way less than what Bryan would consider ideal conditions. He is the son of the Benihana founder or owner or whatever, so he probably ate a bunch of steak growing up. And now he's ruining his health by consuming Bryan's herbivore food.
For its life, every calorie has to fight for its life. Every calorie has had to fight for its life.
So I was really excited to see the rock solid science behind his diet.
We've gone through all the scientific evidence.
By the way, this face that you are seeing, not this
I was
one.
really excited to see the rock solid science behind his diet.
We've gone through.
This is the product of lip injections, face injections, a bunch of crap that he's doing to look more human, because his diet doesn't work. You can see videos from before he started this baby face protocol.
The scientific evidence. We've combed through all the best studies.
In his very long Twitter thread on why he doesn't eat meat, he listed 10 different studies looking at meat consumption and its effect on longevity, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and even dementia.
By the way, I was just reading that Bryan posted increases mortality risk. I mean, everybody's at risk of mortality, either you like it or not, unless you upload your consciousness. Oh my god. But everybody, as in not every person, but every body, every cadaver is at risk of mortality, because it's just our biology. Unless you can change the telomeres to make them last longer somehow, even though they are capped and made so that we only live around 120. Yeah, whatever. What I mean is mortality and health are longevity and health are completely different things. There are people who consume a lot of nicotine and they live a long life, but they barely move. They are alive, possibly because the biome wants to keep being alive, thus makes the body still being alive and feeds off of the nicotine. But that's basically that. And the person basically moves, basically talks, is just like mostly vegetative. So even though something like nicotine and other compounds Bryan is taking might increase longevity, so to speak, they for sure cannot be increasing health. And I already made a video about this 2025 blueprint, which is ridiculous, because he consumes anti-nutrients every single day. How can you thrive on anti-nutrients?
And whole studies sounds very impressive, but what kind of studies do you think these are? Maybe they took two groups of people who were the same age, the same height, the same weight, and so on, and gave them the same meals, but one group got meat and the other group got beans. The studies were something like that, right? Not at all. Every single one of these 10 studies relies on questionnaires for its data. Here's an example of one of these questionnaires from Cambridge University. Do you really think you can accurately remember what your average use of bacon was for all of last year? Further, did you eat your bacon in a cheeseburger with fries or as part of a salad? They don't know that.
This is such a used fallacy. His point is incredible, but why would a salad be good for a carnivorous animal?
Back in 1994, a study claimed that hot dogs increase brain cancer risk in children.
They asked the people, did you eat a hot dog? They didn't ask them, did you put it in a bun? Did you put ketchup on it? That's important because it may be that it's not the hot dog at all that's causing this increased risk of cancer.
It is incredible, this recording. I don't know who this guy is. He certainly seems like a pioneer in his thinking. He's basically the opposite of an NPC. Sure, even if it's processed meat from pork, which is feed-fed, which is totally unideal, it's still meat for the most part. It still has most of the nutrients from pork. But then you put it in a glyphosate seed sludge, anti-nutrient toxin-filled bun, and you add some ketchup which has nicotine, sugar, etc. Who is to blame?
Maybe it's the bun, maybe it's the ketchup, maybe it's the mustard.
Think about the type of people who eat the most hot dogs. Do you think they're the type to eat a hot dog with wheatgrass juice and a salad after the morning?
Wheatgrass juice is not good for humans, maybe for cows, and salads the
Yoga,
same.
or do they eat it with fries and a Coke?
Yoga is one of the very few exercises, which even isn't an exercise because it's not really exertive, that humans can do that is good for them. Fries and Coke. Yeah, fries full of seed oil. Probably glyphosate. The Coke is kind of obvious. And no, the worst part of Coke is not the sugar. It has twice as much sugar as milk, which is the same sugar as apple juice from just ground up apples. So yeah, 10% sugar is not that much. It's kind of irrelevant. It's the rest that is in there that is not ideal.
After a cigarette. This issue is a well-known fatal flaw of questionnaires. It's called the healthy user bias. Who's the type of person to eat less meat? The average person who listens to conventional healthy advice, exercises, doesn't smoke. They make sure to get good sleep. They don't drink too much and they don't do drugs. And of course, they listen to their doctor and try to lean towards a more healthy plant-based diet.
Processed meats cause cancer, and red meat probably does too.
After all, we've been told meat is terrible for health for decades. So, the type of person to do healthy stuff is much more likely to eat less meat. The type of person in these studies who's answering, I ate red...
Yeah, this is a good point. But the thing is, the main takeaway I would take from that is that there are two groups of people. The people who trust their instinct, what they feel like doing, and the people who don't trust their instinct and instead trust words. But both of them end up with huge problems in the current world. If you were in the wild, trusting your instinct would be amazing, like a child does, like a dog does, because there is only natural foods there. But since we have a bunch of foods that have been engineered, literally, to be highly palatable, then it basically messes up with your hunger signals. But by the way, okay, this is healthy, it's red meat, but then it's a bunch of carcinogens over here. It has AGEs because it was cooked. It has a probably crappy cheese that isn't even made through fermentation.
Meat every single day for all of last year is more likely to be the type of person who doesn't listen to health advice and is eating that meat in the form...
By the way, you should never listen to health advice, ever. You should only eat from foods that you would find in the wild, and then just eat as much as you feel like and when you feel like. you will be good to go. Don't watch any videos, don't listen to any doctors. You'll be better than anybody else. The only thing that you could and probably should do is an IgG food tolerance test to make sure you don't have antibodies to specific wild foods. If that is the case, you should just withdraw from them like for 2 years. Then you're good to go again.
Burgers with fries, microwaved lasagna, Denny's Grand Slams, and they probably wash it down with a Coke. Just in 2023, Harvard claimed that red meat is linked to diabetes. This study was heavily criticized for its use of questionnaires. The participants were asked to guesstimate how many times they ate certain categories of food for the entire previous year. In the red meat category, they included lasagna and casseroles. Are we really supposed to believe?
Yeah, lasagna as pasta. Pasta is made from grains. Grains have a bunch of anti-nutrients. If they are not fermented, then they are there still. Why the Italians always fermented. And even the cheese, they fermented it before they stretched the mozzarella. And it has, above all, glyphosate, which is something relatively recent. I mean, 100 years ago, there was no glyphosate in people's diet, from what I understood.
That a steak that doesn't have any sugar is going to give you diabetes? Remember, all 10 of those papers that Bryan brought up on his Twitter thread were very weak questionnaire-based studies.
I mean, it's impossible. Even through crappy, for example, pork or poultry, you cannot possibly get that, because that is related to metabolism, to glucose. If you don't consume glucose, how can you impact your glucose metabolism? Switch to keto, problem solved.
The fact that you can't make any reliable conclusions based on these types of studies is old news, and it's well known.
Data may be crappy.
The glaring flaws with these studies were even laid out in a vegan versus omnivore debate on Joe Rogan's podcast way back in 2018.
By the way, most studies are crap anyway.
Meat has been perceived as unhealthy for a long time. In those observational studies, the people who eat more red meat are also smoking more, they have higher body mass index, they're less physically active. So how do you know that it's the red meat that's causing the problem and not those other things? You don't.
This was a pretty good point by Joseph Everett. I am a strongly believer of calling out health advisors. I believe you should never follow any of them, because it's just opinions, it's just convictions. Look at wild animals. They are healthy as long as they're in a place of abundance. And they just follow their instinct. It's not like they're reading books or whatever, or their doctors are taking their blood tests and whatnot. So basically, all of nutrition advice is a fallacy. It is a fallacy. I think for us, proof is in testimonies, in what we call anecdotal evidence, and use to basically disregard. But I think it's the only thing that we should actually regard. Thanks for watching.